Sorry, this table's for family only, my brother smirked, pointing toward a fold-out chair by the trash can. Everyone laughed as I sat alone. Then I pulled my phone and canceled their mortgage payments. Now they're begging. I never thought I'd be writing this story, but after what happened at my family's Thanksgiving dinner last month, I need to get this off my chest. I'm 34 male, and I've spent most of my adult life being the family disappointment, according to my parents and my golden child brother Ryan, who's 31. Growing up, the favoritism was so obvious it was painful. Ryan was the athletic one, the charming one, the one who could do no wrong. I was the quiet kid who preferred books to sports, computers to parties. When Ryan made varsity football, there was a celebration dinner. When I got accepted to MIT with a full scholarship, my parents said that's nice and asked if I'd seen Ryan's latest touchdown highlight. The pattern continued into adulthood. Ryan got married to his college sweetheart Sarah in this massive wedding that my parents paid for. When I graduated from MIT and landed my first job at a tech startup, they didn't even come to my graduation. Ryan's wedding got front-page treatment on my mother's Facebook for months. My graduation got a single photo buried in her timeline. But here's what my family never bothered to learn about me. I'm really, really good with money. While Ryan was living it up in college on my parents' dime, I was working internships and side jobs, learning about investments and cryptocurrency before most people knew what Bitcoin was. While he was buying expensive cars and taking lavish vacations, I was living below my means and building wealth. The startup I joined out of college, it got acquired by Google 3 years later. My stock options were worth more money than my parents made in a decade. But I never told them. Why would I? They'd never shown interest in my life before. Instead, I kept living modestly. I drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic, lived in a decent but not flashy apartment, and dressed like any other tech worker. My family assumed I was just getting by like most millennials. Meanwhile, I was quietly building a real estate portfolio and making strategic investments. Ryan, on the other hand, was living paycheck to paycheck despite making good money as a sales manager. He and Sarah had 2 kids, Mason, who's 8, and Emma, who's 6, and they lived in this beautiful house in the suburbs that they could barely afford. My parents constantly helped them out with money for various emergencies, and I'd hear about it during our monthly family dinners. Those dinners were torture. Every month, my mother would insist on these big family gatherings where Ryan and his family would get all the attention while I sat there listening to them talk about soccer games, school projects, and Ryan's latest work promotion. I was always treated like the weird bachelor uncle who didn't quite fit in. My parents, Linda and Tom, made it clear through their actions that Ryan's family was their priority. They babysit Mason and Emma every weekend. They never missed a school event, and they were always available to help with whatever Ryan needed. When I'd try to share something about my work or my life, the conversation would quickly shift back to Ryan and the grandkids. I should have gone no contact years ago, but I kept hoping things would change. Stupid, I know. The breaking point came 3 months ago when Ryan called me out of nowhere. He'd never called me before unless he needed something, so I was immediately suspicious. "Hey Ryan, how's it going?" he said, using that fake friendly tone he'd perfected. "It's fine. What do you need, Ryan? Why do you always assume I need something? Can't I just call my brother?" I laughed. "In the 15 years since we've been adults, you've called me exactly 3 times. Once to ask if I could help you move, once to ask if I knew anything about fixing computers, and once to ask if I could lend you money for Sarah's birthday present. So yeah, I assume you need something." There was a pause. "Okay, fine. I do need something. Sarah and I are having some financial trouble. The mortgage payment is getting tough with everything going up in price, and we were wondering if you could help us out, just temporarily." "How much are we talking about?" "Well, our mortgage is $2,800 a month. If you could cover it for a few months while I figure things out, that would be amazing. I know you don't have kids or a mortgage, so you probably have some extra money lying around." I was quiet for a long moment. Ryan had never asked about my financial situation, never showed interest in my career, never even asked what I did for a living beyond something with computers. But now he assumed I had extra money lying around? "I'll think about it," I told him. "Really? That would be incredible, Ryan." I knew I could count on family. After I hung up, I did something I'd never done before. I looked into Ryan's finances. Not through any illegal means, just public records and information I could find online. What I discovered was worse than I thought. Ryan and Sarah were drowning in debt. Credit cards maxed out, a car loan they could barely afford, and yes, they were 3 months behind on their mortgage. They were facing foreclosure within 6 months if they couldn't catch up. But here's what really got me. I found out that my parents had already given them $15,000 earlier that year to help with their debt. $15,000 they'd never offered to me, never even mentioned to me. Money they probably couldn't afford to give away, considering my dad's been retired for 2 years and my mom only works part-time. I realized Ryan wasn't just asking me for help. He was asking me to be his family's financial backup plan, while my parents continued to pour their retirement savings into his lifestyle. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I called Ryan back the next day. "I'll help you," I told him, "but not the way you think." "What do you mean?" "I'm not going to give you money, Ryan. I'm going to buy your mortgage from the bank." There was a long pause. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means I'll pay off what you owe the bank, and instead of paying them, you'll pay me. Same amount, same terms. The only difference is I'll be more flexible if you need time." "You can do that?" "Yeah, I can do that." What Ryan didn't understand was that by buying his mortgage, I wasn't just helping him. I was putting myself in a position of power. If he couldn't pay me, I could foreclose on the house just like any bank could. It took about 6 weeks to complete the transaction. Ryan was so grateful he actually cried when I told him it was done. My parents were amazed that their struggling son had somehow managed to help his brother with such a big financial problem. I let them think I'd taken out loans or borrowed money. I didn't mention that I'd paid the $180,000 remaining balance on Ryan's mortgage in cash, or that it represented less than a quarter of my liquid assets. For 2 months, Ryan made his payments to me on time. He was the perfect borrower, calling to thank me every month and telling everyone what an amazing brother I was. My parents were proud of me for the first time in years. Then November rolled around, and with it, the monthly family Thanksgiving dinner that my mother insisted on hosting every year. I should have known something was up when I arrived at my parents' house and saw Ryan's car, Sarah's SUV, and my aunt and uncle's car in the driveway. My mom had said it would be just family, but apparently she'd invited my dad's brother Jim and his wife Carol, along with their kids. When I walked in, the house was buzzing with activity. Mason and Emma were running around, Sarah was helping my mom in the kitchen, and Ryan was in the living room with my dad and Uncle Jim, drinking beer and watching football. "Ryan!" my mom called out when she saw me. "Perfect timing." We're just about to sit down. I followed her toward the dining room and immediately saw the problem. The big dining room table was set for 8 people, but there were 9 of us counting me. Instead of setting up the table to accommodate everyone, they'd arranged it to seat the couples and kids, with no place for me. "Where should I sit?" I asked. That's when Ryan looked up from his conversation with my dad and Uncle Jim. He had this smirk on his face that I remembered from childhood, the same one he'd worn whenever he was about to humiliate me in front of others. "Sorry, this table's for family only," he said, pointing toward a fold-out chair that had been set up next to the kitchen door, right by the trash can. "We set up a special spot for you over there." Everyone in the room went quiet for a second. Then Uncle Jim started chuckling. "Special spot for the bachelor uncle, huh?" Sarah joined in the laughter. "At least he won't have to worry about kids spilling anything on him over there." My dad shook his head with a grin. "Boys will be boys." Even my mom, who I thought might stand up for me, just smiled and said, "Now, Ryan, be nice to your brother." "Ryan, that chair is perfectly fine. You'll have more room to yourself." I stood there for a moment, looking around the room. Ryan was grinning like he'd just won a prize. Sarah was covering her mouth to hide her laughter. My aunt and uncle looked uncomfortable but weren't saying anything. My parents were acting like this was all just harmless family fun. The kids, Mason and Emma, were looking back and forth between their dad and me, clearly sensing the tension, but not understanding what was happening. "Family only," I repeated slowly. "That's right," Ryan said. "This table is for people who actually have families. You know, spouses, kids, real responsibilities." "Real responsibilities," I echoed. "Come on, Ryan," Sarah chimed in. "Don't be so sensitive. It's just a seating arrangement." I walked over to the fold-out chair by the trash can and sat down. The chair was positioned so I was facing away from the table, looking at the kitchen door instead of my family. I could hear them all settling in behind me, the conversation resuming as if nothing had happened. "Pass the stuffing," someone said. "Mason, use your napkin," Sarah called out. "This turkey is perfect, Linda," Aunt Carol complimented. I sat there listening to them eat and talk, excluded from the conversation both physically and socially. Every few minutes, someone would make a comment about the kids' table or the singles section, and there would be more laughter. That's when I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app and navigated to the loan management section. Ryan's mortgage was listed there, along with all the payment details and options. I stared at it for a moment, thinking about everything that had led to this point. Then I selected the option to call loan due immediately. The app asked me to confirm that I wanted to accelerate the loan and demand full payment within 30 days, as was my right under the mortgage agreement. I confirmed. Within seconds, I received an email confirmation. The system had automatically generated a notice of acceleration that would be mailed to Ryan's house and emailed to his attorney by tomorrow morning. But I wasn't done. I opened my real estate investment app and looked at the 3 rental properties I owned in Ryan's neighborhood. All 3 had tenants whose leases were up in the next 2 months. I'd been planning to renew all of them, but now I had a different idea. I sent a message to my property manager telling him not to renew any of the leases and to prepare the properties for sale. 3 houses hitting the market in the same neighborhood would definitely impact property values, especially Ryan's house. Then I opened my stock trading app and looked at my portfolio. I owned significant stakes in several local businesses, including the company where my Uncle Jim worked as a manager. I sent a message to my financial advisor asking him to arrange a meeting with the board of directors to discuss operational efficiency and cost reduction. Finally, I opened my cryptocurrency wallet and moved $50,000 worth of Bitcoin to my checking account. If Ryan wanted to play games about who was family and who had real responsibilities, I was going to show him what real financial responsibility looked like. All of this took about 10 minutes. During that time, the conversation at the table had moved on to discussing Christmas plans. "We should do Christmas at our house this year," Ryan was saying. "We've got the space, and it would be nice to start some new family traditions." "That sounds wonderful," my mom agreed. "Ryan, you'll have to come early to help set up tables and chairs." I turned around in my fold-out chair to face the table. "I don't think I'll be available for Christmas," I said. "Why not?" my dad asked. "Well, Ryan and Sarah are going to be pretty busy dealing with their foreclosure." The room went completely silent. Ryan's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "What are you talking about?" Sarah asked nervously. I held up my phone. "I just called in Ryan's mortgage. He's got 30 days to pay me the full $180,000 he owes, or I foreclose on the house." Ryan's face went white. "You can't do that." "Actually, I can. It's right there in the mortgage agreement you signed. I have the right to call the loan due at any time with 30 days notice." But you said you were helping us," Sarah stammered. "I was helping you. For 2 months, I accepted your payments when any bank would have foreclosed months ago. But since this table is for family only, and I'm apparently not family, I don't see why I should keep helping." My mom stood up from her chair. "Ryan, this is ridiculous." "Ryan didn't mean anything by the seating arrangement." "Didn't he?" I asked. "Ryan, tell everyone what you said to me." Ryan was staring at his plate, not speaking. "He said this table was for family only," I continued. "For people with real responsibilities." "Well, here's a real responsibility. Paying your mortgage to your brother who saved you from foreclosure." Uncle Jim cleared his throat. "Now, Ryan, I'm sure we can work this out. Families shouldn't fight over money." "You're right," I agreed. "Families shouldn't fight over money. But apparently I'm not family, so this is just a business transaction." I stood up from my fold-out chair and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" my mom called after me. "Home. I've got some real responsibilities to take care of, like calling my attorney to make sure the foreclosure paperwork is filed correctly." "Ryan, wait," Ryan finally spoke up. "I'm sorry about the chair thing. It was just a joke." I turned back to look at him. "A joke? You humiliated me in front of our entire family because you thought it was funny. You've spent our entire lives treating me like I'm less than you, like I don't matter, like I'm not really part of this family. And our parents have let you do it." "That's not true," my mom protested. "Isn't it? When's the last time you asked about my job, my life, my goals? When's the last time you celebrated anything I accomplished? You don't even know what I do for a living, but you know every detail of Ryan's sales quotas." I looked around the room at all of them. "You want to know what I do? I'm a software engineer who sold his startup to Google for 8 figures. I own 3 rental properties in this neighborhood. I have investments in half the businesses in this town. I could buy and sell Ryan's house 10 times over without blinking." The room was dead silent. "But none of you ever asked, because you decided years ago that Ryan was the successful one, and I was the disappointment. Well, congratulations. Your successful son is about to lose his house, unless he can come up with $180,000 in 30 days. I walked to the door, then turned back one more time. "Oh, and Uncle Jim? You might want to update your resume. The board meeting I'm calling for your company isn't going to go well for middle management." I left them sitting there in stunned silence. The next few days were interesting. Ryan called me about 50 times, but I didn't answer. Sarah sent me long text messages begging me to reconsider. My parents showed up at my apartment twice, but I didn't let them in. Finally, my mom managed to corner me at the grocery store. "Ryan, please," she said. following me down the cereal aisle. Ryan made a mistake, but you can't take his house away. Think about Mason and Emma. I am thinking about them, I told her. I'm thinking about how they're being raised by parents who believe they're entitled to other people's money, and that it's okay to humiliate family members for fun. It was just a seating arrangement. I stopped walking and turned to face her. Mom, it wasn't just a seating arrangement. It was 34 years of being treated like the family afterthought finally reaching its breaking point. We never treated you differently than Ryan. I laughed. Really? How much money have you given Ryan over the years? She was quiet. How much, Mom? The $15,000 earlier this year? The $5,000 for Sarah's car repair? The $3,000 for Mason's medical bills that insurance didn't cover? The countless times you've paid for their groceries or utilities or whatever other emergency they had? That's different. He has children. And how much have you ever offered to give me? Again, silence. The answer is zero, Mom. You've never offered me a single dollar. Never asked if I needed help. Never even inquired about my financial situation. But you assumed I had extra money lying around when Ryan needed help? You don't have children. You don't need... I don't need what? Family support? Love? Respect? You're right. I guess I don't need those things. I've learned to live without them. I started walking again, and she followed. Please, Ryan, what can we do to fix this? Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. I stopped at the checkout line and looked at her. You want to fix this? Here's what you can do. Admit that you and Dad have treated Ryan and me differently our entire lives. Admit that you've enabled his irresponsible financial behavior by constantly bailing him out. And admit that you've never bothered to get to know me as an adult because you decided I wasn't worth your attention. But that's not... If you can't admit those things, then there's nothing to fix. Ryan has 30 days to pay me or he loses the house. It's that simple. The next week, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Ryan? This is Jim Hendricks from First National Bank. I knew Jim. He was the loan officer who had originally processed Ryan's mortgage. Hi, Jim. What can I do for you? Well, your brother Ryan came to see me about refinancing his mortgage to pay you off, but frankly, his credit situation has deteriorated significantly since you took over his loan. We can't approve him for the amount he needs. That's unfortunate. He mentioned that you might be willing to work out some kind of payment plan. Did he mention why he needs a payment plan? There was a pause. He said there was a family disagreement. That's one way to put it. Jim, let me ask you something. If I was just any investor who owned Ryan's mortgage and he couldn't pay, what would you advise me to do? Well, from a business standpoint, you'd have every right to foreclose. That's what I thought. Thanks for calling, Jim. 2 weeks before the 30-day deadline, my dad called me. Ryan, we need to talk. About what? About this situation with Ryan. Son, I know you're upset, but destroying your brother's life isn't going to solve anything. I'm not destroying his life, Dad. I'm holding him accountable for his financial obligations, just like any lender would. But you're not just any lender. You're his brother. Am I? Because according to Ryan, the table at Thanksgiving was for family only, and I wasn't welcome at it. He apologized for that. No, he didn't. He said it was a joke when he realized I had the power to foreclose on his house. That's not an apology, that's damage control. What do you want from us, Ryan? I don't want anything from you, Dad. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. For 34 years, you've taught Ryan that he can treat me however he wants without repercussions. Well, now there are repercussions. So you're going to make your nephew and niece homeless? Ryan is going to make his children homeless if he doesn't figure out how to pay his debt. That's not my responsibility. We raised you better than this. I was quiet for a long moment. Did you, Dad? Because from where I'm sitting, you raised Ryan to believe he was entitled to everything, and you raised me to believe I wasn't worth anything. So which one of us is acting exactly like you taught us? 1 week before the deadline, Sarah showed up at my office. My assistant buzzed me. Mr. Chen, there's a Sarah Williams here to see you. She says she's your sister-in-law. I considered having her escorted out, but curiosity got the better of me. Send her in. Sarah looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed. She had dark circles under her eyes, and she was clearly exhausted. Ryan, please. I'm begging you, don't take our house. Hello, Sarah. How did you find out where I work? I hired a private investigator. Did you know you're worth over $12 million? I leaned back in my chair. Is that what the PI told you? Ryan, why didn't you ever tell us? We had no idea you were so successful. When would I have told you? During one of our deep family conversations where you asked about my career? Oh, wait, those never happened. But we're family. We should help each other. I did help you. I bought your mortgage when you were facing foreclosure. For 2 months, I accepted your payments and didn't charge you any fees or penalties. Then your husband decided to humiliate me at a family dinner. He's sorry. We're both sorry. Sarah, let me ask you something. Before you found out how much money I have, what did you think of me? She was quiet. Did you ever invite me to Mason's birthday parties? Did you ever ask me to come to Emma's school plays? Did you ever once suggest that maybe I should sit at the main table during family dinners instead of wherever they stuck me? I just followed Ryan's lead. Exactly. And Ryan's lead was to treat me like I didn't matter. So why should I treat any of you like you matter to me? Because we're family. No, Sarah. You made it very clear that I'm not family. I'm just the weird uncle who's good for emergency loans. She started crying. The kids don't understand why we might have to move. Mason asked me if Uncle Ryan hates him. That hit me harder than I expected. I don't hate Mason or Emma, I said quietly, but I also can't keep enabling their parents' irresponsible behavior. What if we pay you back everything? Not just the mortgage, but interest, penalties, whatever you want. With what money, Sarah? Ryan's already behind on his car payment again, and I know you haven't found a job yet. I'll get a job. Ryan will get a second job. We'll figure it out. You should have figured it out before you got so deep in debt. And you definitely should have figured it out before Ryan decided to humiliate me in front of our entire family. She sat there crying for a few more minutes, then left without saying anything else. The night before the deadline, Ryan finally called me from a number I didn't recognize. Ryan, it's me. I know who it is. I fucked up. I know I fucked up, but please don't do this. Do what, Ryan? Expect you to pay your debts? You know I can't come up with $180,000. Then you shouldn't have borrowed $180,000. I didn't borrow it from you. I borrowed it from the bank. And then I bought your debt from the bank. That's how loans work, Ryan. But you're my brother. Am I? Because I seem to remember you saying I wasn't family. I was just being an asshole. You know how I get sometimes. Yeah, I do know how you get. You've been getting that way for our entire lives. And our parents have always let you get away with it. What do you want me to do? Grovel? Fine, I'm groveling. I'm sorry I put you at the kiddie table. I'm sorry I said you weren't family. I'm sorry I've been a shitty brother. There. Are you happy? Ryan, do you know why I'm really doing this? Because you're pissed about the dinner thing. The dinner thing was just the last straw. I'm doing this because you've never faced consequences for anything in your entire life. Mom and Dad have always bailed you out, made excuses for you, cleaned up your messes, and you've learned that you can treat people however you want because someone will always fix it for you. That's not true, isn't it? You're $200,000 in debt, Ryan. You make $80,000 a year. Do the math. You've been living beyond your means for years, and instead of cutting back, you just kept borrowing more money. We have expenses. Everyone has expenses. The difference is most people live within their means. So what, you're going to teach me a lesson by making my kids homeless? I'm going to teach you a lesson by holding you accountable for your choices. What you do next is up to you. The next day was the deadline. At 5 p.m., Ryan's payment was officially late, and I had the legal right to begin foreclosure proceedings. I was sitting in my apartment, looking at the foreclosure paperwork my attorney had prepared, when my phone rang. It was my mom. Ryan, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this to your brother. Mom, it's done. He had 30 days to pay, and he didn't pay. What if I pay you? I sat up straighter. What? What if I pay you the money Ryan owes? I have some savings, and I can take out a loan against the house. Mom, you don't have $180,000. I can get it. It might take a few weeks, but I can get it. I was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Let me ask you something, Mom. Why are you willing to destroy your financial security to save Ryan from the consequences of his actions? Because he's my son. And what am I? You're my son too. Then why have you never offered to help me with anything? Why have you never shown the same concern for my life that you're showing for his? Because you never needed help. How do you know? Did you ever ask? She was quiet. Mom, I lived in my car for 3 months when I was 25, because I spent every penny I had investing in my startup. Did you know that? No. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches for a year while I was building my business. Did you know that? No. I worked 100-hour weeks and didn't take a vacation for 3 years. Did you know that? No. Of course you didn't know, because you never asked. You assumed that because I didn't come crying to you for help, I didn't need any support. But when Ryan needs help, You're willing to mortgage your house. Ryan, what do you want me to say? I want you to admit that you've treated us differently our entire lives. I want you to admit that you've enabled Ryan's irresponsible behavior. And I want you to understand that I'm not the villain here. Ryan borrowed money, and now he has to pay it back. That's how the adult world works. But you could afford to forgive the debt. I could afford to do a lot of things, Mom. I could afford to buy Ryan a new house. I could afford to pay off all his credit cards. I could afford to set up college funds for Mason and Emma. But why should I? Because we're family. No, Mom. We're related. Family is people who love and support each other. Family is people who treat each other with respect. Family is people who celebrate each other's successes and help each other through failures. We're not family. We're just people who happen to share DNA. That's where we left it. My mom hung up, and I signed the foreclosure papers. But the story doesn't end there. 3 days later, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was my dad. Ryan's in the hospital. I sat up in bed. What happened? He had a panic attack. Sarah thought he was having a heart attack and called an ambulance. The stress of all this. It's killing him, son. Is he okay? Physically, yes. But Ryan, he's talking about suicide. He says he can't handle losing the house, losing his family's respect. He says it's all his fault, and he doesn't know how to fix it. I was quiet for a moment. Dad, I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to really think about your answer. Do you think Ryan is suicidal because he might lose his house? Or because this is the first time in his life he's had to face real consequences for his actions? What kind of question is that? An important one. Dad, Ryan has been having his problems solved by other people his entire life. Every time he's gotten in trouble, someone has bailed him out. He's never learned how to cope with adversity because he's never had to. So you think this is good for him? I think this is necessary for him. Dad, Ryan is 31 years old. He has 2 children and a wife who depend on him. But he's never learned to be responsible because you and Mom have always been his safety net. So we should have just let him fail? Yes. You should have let him fail when the stakes were lower. When he was running up credit card debt in college, when he bought a car he couldn't afford, when he took out the mortgage on a house that was too expensive. Instead, you kept bailing him out, and now he owes $200,000 and has no idea how to handle adult problems. Ryan, he's your brother. Don't you care about him at all? I thought about that for a long moment. Dad, I love Ryan. I've always loved Ryan, even when he was treating me like garbage. But I love him enough to let him face the consequences of his choices. If I bail him out now, what lesson does that teach him? What lesson does that teach Mason and Emma? That family takes care of family. No, Dad. That lesson teaches them that they never have to be responsible for their actions, because someone will always fix their problems. Do you want Mason and Emma to turn out like Ryan? Do you want them to be 31 years old and having panic attacks because they never learned how to handle adversity? My dad was quiet for a long time. What would it take for you to forgive the debt? Dad, I'm not asking Ryan to pay me because I need the money. I'm asking him to pay me because he needs to learn that debt has to be repaid. If you really want to help him, stop trying to convince me to bail him out and start helping him figure out how to earn the money. How is he supposed to earn $180,000? The same way I did, by working hard, living below his means, and making smart financial decisions. Dad, I started with nothing. Actually, I started with less than nothing because I had student loans. But I figured it out, and Ryan can too. But he has kids. So do millions of other people who manage to pay their mortgages. Dad, having kids doesn't entitle you to other people's money. It means you need to be more responsible, not less. We talked for another hour, but I didn't change my mind. The foreclosure was going forward. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. My attorney called me. Ryan, I just got a call from Ryan's attorney. They want to propose a settlement. What kind of settlement? They're offering to pay you $100,000 in cash within 60 days, and in exchange, you'd forgive the remaining $80,000 and transfer the house back to them. I was surprised. Where are they getting $100,000? Apparently, Sarah's parents are refinancing their house to help them. I thought about this for a moment. Sarah's parents, the Johnsons, were good people. They'd always been kind to me, and unlike my parents, they'd never shown favoritism between their children. Tell them I'll consider it, but I have conditions. Yes? What conditions? First, Ryan has to attend financial counseling for a year. Second, he has to write a formal apology letter to me acknowledging how he's treated me over the years. Third, he has to agree to pay me $500 a month for the next 10 years as interest on the forgiven debt. And fourth, my parents have to attend family therapy with me to address our relationship issues. That's a lot of conditions. It's a lot less than $180,000. My attorney called back the next day. They've agreed to your terms. I was shocked. I'd expected them to reject at least some of the conditions. All of them? All of them. Ryan and Sarah are desperate, Ryan. And your parents. I think this whole situation has been a wake-up call for them. The next month was interesting. Ryan started financial counseling with a debt management specialist. My parents and I attended 3 family therapy sessions where, for the first time in my life, they acknowledged how differently they'd treated Ryan and me. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of tears, a lot of accusations, and a lot of uncomfortable truths. But for the first time, I felt like my parents were actually listening to me. The apology letter Ryan wrote was 5 pages long. He detailed specific instances of how he'd mistreated me over the years, acknowledged that our parents' favoritism had been unfair, and promised to treat me with respect going forward. Most importantly, he admitted that his financial problems were his own fault, and that he needed to learn to be more responsible. When the $100,000 payment came through, I did something that surprised everyone, including myself. I used $50,000 of it to set up college funds for Mason and Emma. The other $50,000 went into an investment account that I designated for family emergencies. Not emergencies caused by irresponsible spending, but real emergencies. Medical bills, job loss, natural disasters. The kind of things that could happen to anyone. 6 months later, we had our first normal family dinner in years. Ryan and Sarah's house had been saved, but they downsized their lifestyle significantly. They traded in their expensive cars for used vehicles, stopped eating out, and started budgeting carefully. More importantly, Ryan was making his monthly $500 payments to me on time and without complaint. He'd learned to take financial responsibility seriously. My parents had also changed. They stopped bailing Ryan out of every minor crisis and started asking about my life and career. It wasn't perfect, and it probably never would be, but it was progress. At that dinner, when we sat down to eat, my mom made sure there was a place for me at the main table. Not because I demanded it, but because she'd finally realized I belonged there. Ryan looked at me across the table and said, "Thank you." For what? For not letting me get away with being an asshole anymore. For teaching me to be responsible. For saving our house even though I didn't deserve it. I nodded. "You're welcome. But Ryan, I didn't save your house. You did, by figuring out how to get the money together, and by committing to change your behavior. I know, and I'm going to keep changing. Sarah and I are both working now. We're sticking to our budget, and we're going to pay you back every penny we owe you. I know you will." That night, as I was driving home, I thought about how different things could have been if I'd just accepted the humiliation at Thanksgiving and stayed quiet like I always had before. Ryan would still be irresponsible with money. My parents would still be playing favorites. And I'd still be the family afterthought, sitting by the trash can while everyone else enjoyed their dinner. Sometimes the only way to fix a broken family dynamic is to break it completely and rebuild it from scratch. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't pleasant, but it was necessary. And now, for the first time in 34 years, I actually feel like part of the family.